Today's question is this: why did God wage war against the Canaanites? You know, as believers today, we just assume, the majority of us just assume, and I did so for such a long time, that the Father and Jehovah, Yahweh, YHWH, God, are one and the same person. The question that I'm asking is actually from the Watchtower, because I wanted to go into, again, for my own reading, one of the reasons they give, not only the Watchtower but others give, for the reasons that Yahweh, Jehovah, that is, same, one and the same, took action to wipe out the Canaanites and other territories. How do you think they answered that question? Well, this is how they start off. Why did God wage war against the Canaanites? And they quote Deuteronomy 20:17 from today's English version, which says, completely destroy all the peoples, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord ordered you to do. So there's a clear command by the Lord to wipe out, completely destroy these nations. In fact, there's a total of 31 nations that get wiped out. The word annihilate, according to Brown Drives Briggs Hebrew and English lexicon, notes that the meaning of the word in English is to exterminate. It also has the sense of devoting something to God by completely destroying it. This is sometimes translated as ban, and the word in the context means given to God by complete destruction. That's what that means, that word in Deuteronomy 20 verse 17. Interestingly, let me go back to Joshua. This is the command also that was given to Joshua about how he should go about destroying these people. They are to devote everything to destruction by the edge of the sword. This is in Joshua chapter 6 verse 20 to 21. Everything by the sword. All in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep and donkeys. This is interesting, isn't it? Even the animals are to be completely wiped out. Everything. Romans 12:18, Paul says, be peaceable with all men. That's according to the New World Translation. So the question then is the Father Yahweh? In defense of Yahweh, this is what Jehovah's Witnesses say, to say that one is the same, and these are their reasons. So the first one is, why were the Canaanites displaced? Why were the Aboriginals displaced? Why the American Indians were displaced, right? The Canaanites, this is how they answered this question. The Canaanites were, in a sense, squatters, like everyone else, in a land that did not belong to them. How so? Some 400 years earlier, God had promised the faithful man and Abraham that his descendants would possess the land of Canaan. Genesis 15:18. God kept that promise when he caused the nation of Israel, which descended from Abraham, to occupy the region. Of course, some might protest that the Canaanites already lived there. See? And therefore had a right to the land. But surely, do they have a right to the land? Well, this is what they say. But surely, as the sovereign of the universe, God has the ultimate right to determine who will live, who will also live or die, and who will live there. So their argument is, well, God's the boss. God's in charge of the universe. God's the ruler of the universe. He decides. I agree with them. God is the ruler of the universe. I agree. Yahweh is the ruler of the universe. I'm not doubting that. So yeah, he has a right because he's in charge. No question. Why did God not allow the... However, Here's the thing. You got to ask yourself. Now, Jesus, when he was walking on the planet Earth, he was representing the Father. You see me, you see the Father. There's only one that is good, the Father. You know, you can't charge evil against the Father. Okay? You can't do that. He doesn't tempt anyone, nor does he cause any hurt to anyone. Here's the thing. Who tempted Jesus in the wilderness? Wasn't it the devil? And what did he offer him? All the kingdoms of the world. How could he offer us such an amazing offer? And how could that temptation even be true if it wasn't his? So obviously he was in charge as well. So you have God, Yahweh, in charge, and the devil in charge. Could they be one and the same? Something to think about, right? But I agree. But I don't think that's the Father, though. But I think Yahweh is the boss. I don't have any questions. I don't doubt that at all. Point 2, they make this. Why did God not allow the Canaanites to coexist with the Israelites? Exodus 23:33, they say here, they should not dwell in your land, God warned regarding the Canaanites, that they may not cause you to sin against me in case you should serve their gods. It would become a snare to you. And the prophet Moses later told Israel, is it for the wickedness of the nations that Jehovah your God is driving them away? So obviously there was a couple of issues. One was worship, and 2, let's put it on the fact that they were wicked, sinful. So there's the driving force. Don't we see that today with a lot of governments around the world and those who are attacking other terrorist countries, saying that they're wicked? Immorality, for example, goes on to say here, pagan worship and child sacrifice were widespread in Canaan. Wasn't that also happening in the nation of Israel? Something that Jesus was against totally. But remember in the book of Joshua, God said to wipe out everybody, even innocent children, when they went into these 31 cities, including Jericho. Oh, don't get me wrong. I mean, he saved Rahab. There was some conditions if people were willing to subject themselves to this incoming army. For sure, he would save you, but you'd have to meet their demand. Point 3, were there not other wicked people on earth at that time? Why single out the Canaanites? Well, God had selectively executed sinners on many occasions. No problem with executing sinners. When the earth was filled with violence, in Noah's day, God caused a deluge and wiped out only but one family. God destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah when the sin of their inhabitants became very heavy. Yep, these are direct, where God directly, whether through an angel or himself, has actually wiped out people. And he pronounced judgment against the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, the city of bloodshed. As for the Canaanites, God destroyed them in order to protect Israel and the nation that would eventually produce the Messiah. Something that, this is okay because he was protecting Israel. Now remember, they're charging into this promised land that he gave. In fact, none of these people who murdered all these people in war, justifiable war by God, ever made it into the promised land. It was only Joshua and Caleb that actually make it. Isn't that amazing? They put out, does the Bible condone human warfare? Does God commanding Israel to destroy the Canaanites justify human warfare today? No. So it was okay back then, but today it's not okay. What are their reasons? No earthly nation today has specific favor with God. Isn't that interesting? No earthly nation today has a special favor with God. But I thought Jehovah's Witnesses were a special favor with God. But they're saying no nation, earthly nation. They call themselves a nation. Did you know that? They're like a nation, 8 million plus people. in all the world. They're like a nation within the nations. When the Israelites rejected Jesus as the Messiah, they ceased to represent God in any official capacity, including that of executioners. So, yes, Yahweh used the nation of Israel as an agent of his to justify warfare and murder of innocent people, or people, and including babies and children, and including animals. They were the agent. Why? Well, there's no real good reason why, only that he's the God of the universe. And they were there just to follow orders. They're just to be obedient to that. So then it says, I'm just going to read what they say. Jehovah thus held the Israelites to the same standard as other nations. From that time on, no earthly nation could rightly claim to have God's backing in warfare. 2.2. Jehovah no longer assigns his worshippers to any specific land or geographic region, like Jehovah's Witnesses. They're assigned all over the place. Rather, his servants can be found in all nations, tribes of the earth. That's Jehovah. I'm not talking about the Father and his children. I'm talking about Jehovah and his children, yeah? 3. Jesus clearly indicated that his followers not engage in warfare. Oh, well, that's right. When warning of an impending attack on Jerusalem, he instructed his disciples not to stay and fight, but rather to flee, which they did. Isn't that interesting? Why wouldn't he use, he's still under the old covenant. He's saying this in Matthew 24:15 and 16. He's saying, listen guys, obviously, if you're being attacked or harassed because you believe now in the Son of God, and now the Father's with you, you don't have to end your life. You don't have to be a martyr. No one's asking you to go and kill anybody. The Father's not asking you to do that. The Father's saying to love your enemies. Pray for those who are persecuting you, right? I mean, what's going on? Why is there such a contrast between one covenant and now a future covenant which has nothing to do with annihilating people, nothing to do with territory grab at all? Could it be because the Father is not Yahweh? It says, instead of taking up arms, true Christians, now we're going into true Christians, yes, put their complete trust in, they don't say Jesus Christ, they just say God's kingdom, which will soon remove all wickedness from this earth. So that's their answer. Now, it's no different to many other people and the way they approach it. Slightly, maybe different arguments, but pretty much boils down to the same arguments as the witnesses. To highlight that Yahweh was also kind and patient in some instances. There was salvation, of course, for those who converted to the faith of Yahweh through the nation of Israel. Rahab the prostitute, we know she was spared, and of course other people could have been spared as well if they showed true faith like Rahab did in giving over her allegiance to Yahweh. The commandment to annihilate was at the start limited to the inhabitants of Canaan, as we know. And it's interesting that in Deuteronomy 20, prior to the destruction of Jericho, there were some clear rules of engagement and proper conduct in war against other enemies who did not live in Canaan. If you look at verse 3 of Deuteronomy chapter 20, that the priests were to bless the army before the battle, no different to today's priests. They were to trust God for victory, no different to today's celebrities, soldiers, etc. They had to trust God for the victory. That soldiers were to be excused for personal reasons if they had for example, if they had new land, a new house, or just got married, or if they were just scared. Verses 5 and 8. That enemy cities must be offered a chance to make peace before being besieged and killed and slaughtered. That's verses 10 to 12. that when a city was captured, only the men were to be executed. They were to take the women and absorb them and assimilate them into the nation of Israel. That's verses 13 to 15. But it's interesting that the command then was to actually kill them. That they were not to use a scorched earth policy in siege warfare. They must leave the fruit trees belonging to the city standing, verses 19-20, but kill off all the animals. The judgment was intended to be, as the witnesses try to use, expulsion from the land rather than genocide. It's interesting that no one wants to say genocide, they just want to say expulsion, kick them off the land. You know, what did the witnesses say? Displaced, that's the word, to displace them. And you can see by these actions from Yahweh that he clearly is not that good. He's prepared to wipe out people. We know he killed all the firstborn in Pharaoh's land in Egypt. We have that of Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah, where he directly, and then as we read here, the account of the Canaanites, where he's instructing human agents. So he has his own personal direct commands and then human agents to finish off. There is a lot going on, I know, and it's not easy to look at these crimes. People don't want to say they're crimes. They're just saying, well, he's the God of the world and he has the right to do so. Of course. Same with the presidents of your country. They have a right to do so. No one's going to call them out and say they're crimes. No one's going to put them under the microscope because they're doing what's best for their country. That's the same argument that is being introduced for people, by people, for Yahweh and his actions, is it not? Why did God wage war against the Canaanites? There's some of the reasons why he did so. Do you agree with those reasons? Or do you just see, like Marcion in the first century, that the old covenant God, the Old Testament God, was not and is not the Father? Now, of course, it's not an easy one to tackle because it throws a lot of other thoughts or your belief system a little bit up in the air as to who the true character or who the true Father is. We know for sure one thing: there is no evil with the Father. But right in the beginning, early on in Genesis chapter 3, we are told by Yahweh himself, when after the first humans, as we're told in the book of Genesis, ate from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, Yahweh said of himself to the others, they know now good and evil just like us. I want you to ponder over that thought and ask yourself, does the Father possess evil? Thanks guys for listening.